On today's Minute Apes, watch him. A leader has arrived.
Take your sticky paws off me, damn dirty ape!
Exercise would an ape make a human down. It talks. With a divine bound.
We are determined to know what the apes want. War or peace.
They are the good human is a dead human!
And if it is man's destiny one day to be dominated, then, oh, please, God, let him be dominated by such as you.
Hello and welcome to Minute of the Apes, a daily podcast where we break down every minute of the Play the Ape movies, 1 minute at a time. I'm Todd. That was Richard teasing us in, and he's grinning at me now as I use my
Your radio voice?
This is
My
our
radio voice.
This is our morning voices. This
Hey.
This is our first podcast of the day voice.
where everybody's like super deep and gravelly.
We all got the quiet storm going
That's
on.
right. And I was also getting text messages. How do you make people understand? I'm podcasting right now.
doing
Don't
shit.
text.
Leave me alone.
It's 8 o'clock in the morning.
Morning
Who's
on
texting
Sunday.
you?
Who's
Yeah,
texting?
exactly. Besides Sean.
Well, I played a gig last night.
right here.
And
Yeah.
as you get older, you don't sleep in after gigs. And so people are like, hey, here's something we did last night. Oh, okay, I'm not going to look at that right now.
talking about?
That's right. Leave me alone. Anyway,
Talk about some monkeys.
let's talk monkeys. And that was Sean over there. I didn't introduce Sean.
Use your words.
Yeah, whatever.
Hi,
So
Sean.
we are at minute 26.
Yes, we are.
Do you want to tell us what's going on with minute
All
26,
right,
Sean?
we're going to start minute 26 with Caesar tempting Porkins with a banana and ends with apes back in a courtyard of some sort.
Should you define who Porkins is?
Porkins
Since you
is a
told
fat
us that,
chimp.
You told us that off mic, and
Yeah,
suddenly
isn't-
threw it
Wasn't
in.
Porkins like a nickname from somebody from Star Wars?
It wasn't
Wait,
a nickname. He
nickname,
was.
It was
he-
the name of a character.
he was
His
a
name was
character.
actually called.
He was
Wait,
the-
but he was one of the
He was one of the
rebel.
TIE fighter.
Yeah.
one of the X-wing
That's
pilots.
right, but it was
and
actually
he was
his
fat.
name. Oh, that was
and he was
so
also
sad.
in Tim Burton's original Batman.
Yeah, he was one of the cops.
Yeah, you played the.
Did they give him
Was
a better
he-
name for
Was he
that?
Bullock or something?
He
like that?
tried. It was like a Bullock-like character, but
Yeah.
they didn't call him Bullock.
Oh, I didn't realize it was the same guy.
Yeah, it's him.
Yeah,
I
you
do
see him
believe
in the
he's
very
dead
beginning
now.
of the movie. a
But
lot.
I thought that we just kind of nicknamed him Porkins. I didn't know. Did he ever get it?
No, it's actually, I believe, even in the script.
In the
it's
script,
Porkins.
his name is Porkins,
because
yeah.
they call out Porkins at some point in the
Yeah.
film.
And he
That's
just
rough,
happens to be
isn't
fat.
it?
Yeah.
I know. What's your character's name? Fatty.
What's your character's name? Has no girlfriend.
Okay, but we're also thinking of a man who created a character called Jar Jar Binks, which, at the same time, he doesn't have a great imagination sometimes when it comes to
Man,
things.
his naming conventions are just really obvious. Like he's literally in his kitchen deciding, I'm going to call this cup and saucer.
Yeah.
I'm going to name this guy Han Solo because he's off on his own.
Exactly.
I'm going to call him Skywalker.
By the way, I'm shifting gears back to
I'm
Haley.
sorry.
We named the dog Indiana.
Did you tell us what happens with minute 26 yet? We got off so far.
because with Porkins.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's take a
Monday,
listen.
everybody.
Let's take a listen to minute 26 of Conquest of the Planet of the Apes.
Have you seen this ape before?
Isn't it, Cornelius?
I thought you didn't know him.
But you told me yourself that the talking ape that was murdered.
Executed?
Executed.
Would you say there's a resemblance?
Oh, no.
Look very carefully. Like father, like son, eh?
No. No.
You'd do well to cooperate with us.
Could I please have a glass of water?
As minute 26, we have a courtyard's worth of gorillas, chimpanzees, orangutans, imported apes, Caesar, and a planet's worth of humans.
So, as we get going over, we sit down and especially with Conquest, we're doing our best to a day churn out 10 episodes. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I threw right away, and I want to set it out for our audience right away, is that in these 10 minutes that we're about to tackle, these next 2 weeks that you're about to listen to, this film goes into a mode that I don't think we've seen before, from one of these films where it becomes incredibly repetitive of what we've seen before. Now, we're going to get new information. We're going to get things over these next 10 minutes that are crucial to what, even what you teased. A leader is born. Something's happening here. But
that was a line. That was an actual line that was cut.
Right. Ah. And so the reason I bring that up is that while there are things pertinent to what has to happen for Caesar's journey, they just show us a lot of the same stuff again. So when we say this, we're going to be touching on things that we've already said, because I took my notes watching this, and I did it last night after coming home from a gig, and I'm like, I don't know if I can do this. And I thought,
you did it last night after a gig?
Yeah.
Wow.
I even looked at my wife and said, do I do it tonight or get up early? She's like, do it now, go to sleep.
Get her done.
But
no, I think you need to rewatch these again without the pressure of coming off of something. It's
without the endorphin high of your gig.
Oh, endorphin high, please.
Well, it's like when I read a comic book, because I have to read a comic book. I always walk away angry. I really like, man, this is such a really, if I'm kind of forcing myself to read something, I don't really ever enjoy it.
Right.
And I'm even more hypercritical of it than I am.
I might have been critical last night, but I did go through them again this morning, and I still thought the same things. That, look, I know they had the constraints of budget. I know that this is the first time you've ever tried to put together a franchise, but good God, could you go for different setups? Could you go for something different so that while, Caesar's already seen a lot of what we see in these minutes, give him something new that illuminates what's happening and what he's becoming.
And we'll go into them when we get the individual minutes. There is a bunch of stuff of dialogue that was cut out.
Okay.
And there was dialogue that was added in to make it a little more simple to follow. And I don't know... But it was like earlier when we were talking about scenes that really didn't need to be in there. Dane went kind of really at great lengths of writing a book. And I'm like, well, we didn't really need that. I can see these moments that Dane wrote going, they weren't really needed for these moments. And the way they summarized them was a little bit better than dragging us through a conversation between McDonald and Brett, which is unnecessary, which can be summarized with a conversation with Mrs. Riley and some random Joe.
Right.
But that's for later stuff. We should probably talk about Monday.
Well, we should. And I wanted to preface what was coming here, because I don't think that you can escape the fact that it's a little repetitive of what we've already gotten. So,
did we play the minute already?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
So we have Caesar already with the chimps in his cage, being leader-ish.
Sharing bananas, breaking the three pieces.
I
like Porkins would be the last one to eat. Come on.
He would have ripped that out of Caesar's hand. But what I did
he's reducing his portion.
As this minute cuts
count your macros.
I know, yeah.
As this moment cuts from Caesar to the next little bit, what I did love was what a smart editor to wait until the banana goes in the mouth and cut so we don't see the weird mass trying to chew on it.
Part of it
was
or
really,
shoving their fingers halfway down their mouth.
It was really well done. It was like put it in and cut away, and it was smart.
But there was a moment where he passes the apes out, and we're supposed to flash back on the guards, and one of them is to go watch him. He's a leader.
Oh, really?
Yeah. That was an actual line that
cool.
Dane was supposed to kind of start this off, that we're suspect. The guards are now suspect of who Caesar is based upon what he's doing.
Don't you think leaving that in could have been crucial in the coming moments when we see, and the end of this week where we see the governor is going on fanatically again about IQ tests and things like that? Leaving that in then feeds into why his paranoia is there. These guards are even on alert that watch out, he's a leader. They know that he's very scared of that.
Well, that'll be important for minutes later on this week.
Absolutely.
So after we get done with this moment with Caesar handing out the apes and getting cut right before he eats it, we then cut to what appears to be an interrogation room, which basically just like the same office with the furniture stripped out. I mean,
a blue light.
And the lighting changed, yeah.
He went for a blue light, which is always, I guess, scary. I always thought harsh white light was...
I always thought that meant it's night and
Me too.
The moon's out.
So we have a bright light that comes shining in, and the light is then turned down onto a black and white photograph because it was 1971.
Right.
It was really unnecessary. We could have colorized this photo.
I would said, are they looking at a glamour shot of Zira? That was my first thought.
Well, I mean, it's Cornelius, but yeah, it's like
it's Cornelius. But for me, for a second, it looked like Zira to me. because they made it look so, like I said, like a glamour shot.
It's a press photo, right?
Yeah.
Clearly, that's what it was.
Right.
A press photo they took of Cornelius that they're reusing as opposed to putting him up in that drag again.
It looked like a makeup test
test
photo
photo,
more than
yeah.
any. It was like, seriously, hey, didn't we do a test with Roddy? Okay, get that mocked up and get it in here.
Print it up.
So the light shines down, and if you forgot their names, this is Culp and Hoskins.
Okay.
You know, the spinoff of Cagney and Lacey.
Right.
So Culp and Hoskins are the kind of interrogators that are on Armando. Have you seen this ape before? And Armando weakly says, isn't it Cornelius? And Hoskins says, I thought you didn't know him. And then Armando's like, you told me yourself the talking ape was murdered.
I mean, have you ever seen this ape before? Well, yes, because he was on the goddamn news. I have a TV. I have a radio. I watch social media. I mean, I know this ape exists.
There's a delirium that I think we're supposed to get from Armando in terms of this moment that he's being interrogated that doesn't really come through. Like, I needed Hoskins and Culp to be a little more back and forth, good cop, bad cop.
Don't wait
him,
for the
not at him.
translation. Answer the question.
I didn't want to spend a lot of time here, but
Right.
Armando's answers compared to Hoskins and Culp's questions didn't really give me any intensity that I needed that would have made this feel like well intense.
So that whole moment to me being shot in one shot where they cut around to him is the mistake. It should have been, he looks to the right, something's in his face. What do you know? This one, then he cuts to the left. It should be, if you want to create that chaos, that tension, you've got to have him where it's like, what, there's too much information.
Cut, yeah.
You're not doing it. We don't feel it because you're not doing it to us. We don't feel that being shoved and being torn in numerous directions. And that's where the scene misses out. And unfortunately for Ricardo Montalban, it misses out for his performance because he just almost looks bewildered in the moment, and it's not his fault.
Right.
It's that they didn't shoot it and edit it properly.
It needed to mirror the scene in the previous movie where Zira has been drugged and her eyes open, and all of a sudden she's in this room and this is
could have
happening.
done that too, yeah.
You don't need to necessarily put him back on the map, but just something that draws me back to that same scene.
Right.
I mean, surely a light being turned on kind of evokes that a little bit, but I needed something a little more similar, familiar to know, and to know that he's tired. He's just like kind of brushing his eyes
Right.
off as the image is brought over to him.
I always wonder in these moments also why they just do the downward shot on the character being interrogated. Why aren't you doing something where it's almost his POV panning
up
from
at
each
them,
person?
right.
Something like that where he feels like it's too much coming at me. When you just shoot something like this, that's the way it comes off, is it's just there.
Well, then they go for something that should have been almost comedic. They pull out Armando's circus flyer,
Right.
and they bring a magnifying
And they say,
glass
yeah.
and zoom in on a drawing.
It's
of,
like,
Is
hey,
there a resemblance?
Look at this clip art. Does that not look like this person? What are you talking about?
right, exactly.
That was ridiculous.
Well, also, the magnifying glass looks more like a weird monocle to me than it does I was like, that's the best magnifying glass
Yeah,
you could find for this moment?
Well, I mean, this kind of goes back, and I'll bring it up later on too, where they're bringing props in that to me don't really evoke anything futuristic.
Yeah.
And I know you can't necessarily for the budget go out and make a bunch of sets and a bunch of props. You're literally just kind of shopping around the city to see what looks futuristic, what looks 1991, and this is just kind of lost with the fact that using a flyer and an image. It would have been better if we saw security footage.
Agreed.
Like we were talking about wanting security cameras. It would be better if we saw Armando walking with an ape and they blew that up and had that shot.
Well, and then you wanted it to look futuristic. The playback of video is definitely much more futuristic
Right.
to this era of film goers. That idea of playing back something like that at least feels true to what television would have been. You could do something different with the scratchiness of that, and they would feel something different. It's funny you say the comical nature of bringing that flyer in, because I looked at it and I was like, oh, I don't even remember this being what they did, and I was like, are you kidding
how
me?
they started off the beginning of the movie? You mean
No, what I'm saying, when they showed the flyer, I was, and do you recognize?
Yeah.
Is there a resemblance? I was like, do they mean this to be funny? Because
Right.
it's
I
stupid.
mean, if it was an Alex Ross drawing, that'd be one thing. But
Yes.
again, this looks like clip art that they would have gotten today.
Right. And for those of you out there who aren't comic nerds, Alex Ross is probably amongst the more renowned.
Comic artist.
Comic artist.
Very
fully
photorealistic,
paints his
yeah.
stuff.
Yes, and his stuff is gorgeous.
Well, okay, so I was thinking about what my flyers looked like in 1991, 1992, and they did look like this. Like it's not out of the ordinary to see something like it.
No, it's not.
But it is ridiculous for them to think about the future of 1991 still looking like bad clip art. If they would have had photos, they would have had something.
That it almost felt like to me if somehow my father had been